This program contains graphic violence and sexual situations. Viewer discretion is advised. In July of 2008, 2-year-old Kaye Anthony is reported missing by her grandmother.
I can't find my granddaughter.
Stunned authorities learn that the child had actually vanished a full month earlier, but that her 22-year-old single mother had not bothered to tell anyone.
Casey was kind of like a mixed-up girl. She wanted her kid, she didn't want her kid.
I don't know where my daughter is.
What is that smell?
I have no doubt that Kaylee's body was in the trunk of that car.
The search for Kaye leads to a horrifying discovery.
Kaylee's dead. Nothing can bring that poor girl back.
And when police learn how her mother has been spending her time while her daughter is missing,
Casey was a party girl.
she becomes the prime suspect.
She's a liar. Everything she says so far has been proven to be a lie.
Mind-boggling to think that anybody could do something, to their child.
Spinning a series of elaborate lies without batting an eye, the beautiful young brunette deemed tot mom by the media is soon arrested for murder, vilified in the public eye, and becomes the center of a national spectacle that Time magazine calls the social media trial of the century.
Her story was perfect for media attention.
But did she really kill her daughter? And if so, would she get away with murder?
They tried this case in a way that left more questions than answers.
She's the only one that has those answers.
Kaylee?
I think she's a true sociopath.
I'm evil, and Kaylee's your little angel. You don't even care about me. All you think about is her.
Meet Kaye Anthony, a woman who craved attention and got much more than she bargained for when scandal made her famous. When the remains of 2-year-old Kaye Anthony are found a half-mile from her home in 2008, the city of Orlando, Florida, transforms from the happiest place on earth to the most horrified.
If a child is missing, either they met with foul play, or it's kidnapping, or there are a number of different scenarios, and they were exploring each and every one of them fairly frantically.
So many people are furious.
Outrage over Casey's partying in light of her daughter's disappearance sparks a media frenzy, spawning books, movies, and sky-high ratings for 24-hour cable news.
Who's the nanny?
99.9% anybody who was watching it thought it was a murder. You'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who would change that opinion.
She's the most hated woman in America because most people assume that she did it and got away with it.
Casey Marie Anthony is born to Cindy, a nursing administrator, and George, an ex-cop. They live in the suburbs of Orlando. From an early age, Casey establishes a troubling pattern of stealing, lying, and deception.
She was a liar, she was a manipulator. You couldn't believe a word that came out of her mouth from the time she was really young until everything happened with Kaye.
Casey. Remember when I asked you about your cap and gown for graduation?
Yeah?
What did you tell me?
That they haven't given it to me yet?
Your mother and I met with the principal. He told us you don't have enough credits to graduate.
You saw the principal?
Casey, what is going on?
This is such crap. I took an online course and they're not gonna give me credit for it.
What online course? You didn't tell
And
me.
I'm a half credit short and it's not even fair.
No, there was not an online course. She was making that up. She had dropped out of school and didn't want her parents to know. It was as simple as that.
But that's not the only lie she tells her parents.
She presented herself as being this virginal little girl when really she'd had sex with a lot of people. And then she gets pregnant.
Casey tries to hide her pregnancy, but her brother Lee notices something different about her.
What's up, Chubbs?
Shut up, Lee.
Seriously, Case, you need to back off the chips. It's like you're eating for two.
Did you get out of my face?
She was 7 months along before she even told anybody. This was her MO. She would just lie and lie and lie until she was backed into a corner.
When Casey finally reveals her pregnancy, she points to different fathers, but each paternity test rules them out.
We don't know anything about Kaylee's father. We don't know who it is. We'll probably never know who it is.
Cindy knew that Casey wasn't ready to be a mom, so she offered to adopt the baby so that Casey could go on with her little life. And Casey said no, that she was going to show her mother that she could raise this child by herself.
On August 9th, 2005, Kaylee Marie Anthony is born to 19-year-old Casey.
So Casey was raising Kaylee in her parents' house, so the two mothers jockeyed for position.
Casey resents her mother's interference, but also misses the freedom she once had.
You have a young, good-looking woman that wants to see the world, wants to do things, and she's stuck at home.
You can look at the grandparents who they had an irresponsible daughter, unwed daughter, and they were trying to take care of this child. But at the same time, they're trying to get her to be more accountable and responsible. And she's, you know, kind of in this life where she's still a young woman who wants to have fun and be free, and yet now she's got this weight around her ankle.
Casey was young and she wanted to go out, so she told everybody that she had a job as an event coordinator at Universal Studios. I don't think that they believed her, but there was a lot of don't ask, don't tell in that family.
Where are you going?
To work. Where are the keys?
Dressed like that?
I told you, I'm an events coordinator. We have parties. Keys. Bye-bye.
Cindy then became the mother by default. And there began a real battle between the two of them, all over this little girl. For example, on her second birthday, Cindy helped Kaylee open up all of her presents. And Casey said to one of her friends, "It's my daughter's birthday. I can't believe that she's doing this."
On one hand, Casey wanted to go out and party. And on the other hand, she didn't want her mother stepping in and being a mother to her child.
It's a real strange dynamic that was going on in that family.
You know how it works. You know how it works.
Lying about having a job at Universal Studios allows Casey to spend her nights partying. In May of 2008, Casey meets Fusion Ultra Lounge club promoter Tony Lazzaro, and they begin dating. But Tony doesn't appear ready to be a father to Kaylee.
Have you ever thought about having kids?
Oh man, yeah, maybe. A boy though, because sports, you know, football and, yeah.
Tony's new in town. He has this pretty girl who's willing to sleep with him. It's a casual relationship. The last thing he wants is to be a father. That's not what he was signing up for.
At home, tensions over Casey's behavior have finally boiled over.
Cindy Anthony was willing to put up with a lot. She put up with the lies, she put up with the partying, she put up with the irresponsibility, but it all hit the fan when Casey stole money from Cindy's own mother.
I've had it with you! What? Grandma told me that you stole $300 from Grandpa's hospice account! You don't know. Have you lost your damn mind? I want you out and Kaylee stays with me!
Oh, of course! Because I'm evil and Kaylee's your little angel? How would you even know if money went missing? You don't even care about me anymore! All you care about is her!
Tensions between mother and daughter reach a climax.
Are you crazy?
Casey went to bed. I mean, everybody says don't ever go to bed angry. Well, she certainly went to bed angry that night.
The next morning, Casey doesn't emerge until her parents, Cindy and George, leave for work. By the time Casey shows up that evening at her boyfriend Tony's house, she no longer has her daughter, Kaylee.
Hey, babe.
Hey.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm just tired. Is it cool if I crash here tonight?
Yeah, sure. Where's Kaylee?
She's with my parents.
But this is a lie. Days after Cindy has last seen her granddaughter, Casey is captured in provocative nightclub photos during a hot body contest. Meanwhile, her mother Cindy is sick with worry.
Hello?
Casey, thank God you picked up. Where have you been?
I was staying with friends.
Where's Kaylee? Who's watching her?
She's fine, Mom. She's with a babysitter.
Well, you need to bring her here so your dad and I can watch her. We just miss you.
No, you miss her. I'll bring her by soon, Mom, okay?
Casey tells Cindy that Kaylee's fine, she's staying with friends, but Cindy knows Casey well enough to know that she needs to be concerned about Kaylee's welfare.
Approximately a week after Casey moves out of her parents' house, she abandons her car in a parking lot.
When Casey left home, she took her dad's car with her, but she didn't have any money, so when she finally ran out of gas, she just left it in a parking lot.
Now Casey is without a car, but her friend Amy is going on a long trip. Casey drops her off at the airport, and her problem is solved.
And kiss Kaylee for me, okay?
I will. I can keep the car, right?
Yeah, you wish. Just park it somewhere safe for me, okay?
Okay. You can trust me. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.
With Amy's keys, Casey enters her apartment. And steals her checkbook.
And then Casey goes on a shopping spree and drains her good friend's account and doesn't even give a thought of what the consequences are going to be.
Casey shops only for herself with Amy's stolen checks.
Thank you.
Receipts show that she didn't buy food, clothing, or toys for a child after June 16th. It's been approximately 2 weeks since Cindy has last seen her granddaughter, Kaylee. For reasons unknown, Casey is compelled to get a tattoo by acquaintance Bobby Williams.
Personality, she just seemed to be like just like an outgoing person. Seemed like a loving mother, you know, always very friendly.
So what that pretty little girl I saw you in here with last time?
Kaylee? She's at home with my mom. They're probably swimming or something.
Cool. What's up with this tat? Somebody die or something?
No. I just love my life, that's all.
Casey's tattoo is of an Italian phrase, Bella Vita.
The meaning itself is a beautiful life. I don't know how I would actually feel about it now to this day, so.
I don't know why you won't let me see Kaylee, please. I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, I've called you.
Meanwhile, Cindy and George are missing their granddaughter, but Casey continues to make excuses for her absence.
Watch her whenever you want.
It's been nearly a month since anybody has seen Kaylee, and Casey's father, George, says that he finds an impound notice on the door of his house saying that his car has been towed.
As George and Cindy approach their car inside the impound lot, an ominous odor stops them dead in their tracks.
Oh my God. Oh, what is it? Oh, smell.
You cannot escape the smell of death. And George, being that he was a former deputy sheriff in Ohio, he knew what that smell was.
Decompositional fluids are a smell that you will never forget. Once you smell it, you know.
What is it?
It's just a bag of trash. I'll see you at home.
Decompositional fluid smells nothing like household trash. I think most people or most citizens have some idea you've had roadkill or you've smelled something in your backyard or anything, but you have to imagine that multiplied on quite a large scale.
Had trash been placed in the trunk to conceal an odor?
I have no doubt that Kaylee's body was in the trunk of that car.
I guess one of the defense claims was that if George knew this, why didn't he call the police and say that there's something dead in this car and you need to investigate it? So that the fact that George didn't do that, that kind of delayed the whole thing. Everything seemed to fall into place for Casey.
I don't think that there's a parent in this world that would want to believe that their child was capable of murdering anybody, more or less their own child.
Kaylee's child seat left in the car is yet another trigger that something is wrong.
Casey and Kaylee are nowhere to be found. They haven't talked to her in a month. And now they have this car that smells like death. So now Cindy Anthony is frantic, and she asks Casey's friend Amy to drive her around and help her find her daughter.
And they find Casey at her boyfriend Tony's apartment.
Amy.
Casey, get your stuff. You are coming with me now.
I'm gonna call the police because I'm gonna get you your grant. No, I don't know what you're trying to accuse me of. You don't understand.
Cindy is so upset that she calls 911 multiple times.
Hello?
Hello. I have a 22-year-old person that has grand theft sitting in my auto.
So the 22-year-old person stole something?
Yes, my car and also money.
Okay, is this your son?
Daughter.
During the first of 3 911 calls, there is no mention of Kaylee. After continuous hounding by Cindy about her granddaughter's whereabouts, Casey finally offers up a shocking theory.
Casey, I'm gonna ask you one more time. Where the hell is Kaylee?
Can we just drop it,
No,
please?
we can't drop it. It's been a month, Casey. Please just tell me, did something happen? Where's my granddaughter?
I think I know who has her.
Has her? Who? What do you mean, who has her?
My nanny took her.
The nanny? What nanny? You're not making any sense, Casey. Oh my God.
This is the first time Casey has ever mentioned having a nanny.
She has this bizarre story of a nanny abducting her, and she doesn't seem to be really all that upset about it.
Yeah.
Cindy immediately calls 911 again, and this time reports her granddaughter missing, something Casey hadn't done in 31 days.
There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
911 operators are trying to put together the muddy pieces.
Casey became a person of interest almost immediately. It was her child. She was missing. Naturally, the police are going to want to ask her about a timeline, about what happened. They were trying desperately to find her. At this point, of course, they don't know whether she's living or dead.
So detectives ask her to retrace her steps over the past month.
According to Casey, on the morning of June 16, 2008, she drops off Kaylee with her nanny, Zenaida Gonzalez, nicknamed Zanny, at the Sawgrass Apartments, 10 minutes away from the Anthony home.
How long had you known Zenaida?
Almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years Christmas this year.
And where did you meet her? Who did you meet her through?
Zenaida Gonzalez, she gives as a name. They follow that lead. It leads nowhere.
I got off of work, left Universal, driving back to pick up Kaylee like a normal day. And I show up to the apartment, knock on the door, nobody answers.
Zanny, her supposed nanny, isn't home, so Casey says that she waits on the steps for her to return with Kaylee. As time progresses, Casey says she begins to panic.
So Casey tells detectives that she's gone on this search, driving around to places where her alleged nanny has taken Kaylee in the past.
No. Come on! Oh no. Where are you?
Have you seen a little girl anywhere? She's about 2.5. She's just a little girl. She has short brown hair.
No, I'm sorry. I haven't seen anybody.
Her story can't be verified. But investigators do confirm that Casey sleeps at her boyfriend Tony's house on the night she now claims Kaylee was kidnapped. And she says nothing about the crime to her boyfriend.
Where's Kaylee?
She's with my parents.
During the investigation, Tony tells cops that Casey had come over the night that Kaylee went missing. And he also says that he'd never heard anything about a nanny.
You know, it just doesn't add up. I mean, it's pathological is what it is.
For the next 31 days, Casey says she leads a one-woman search for her baby, looking in malls, banks, any place Zenaida could have gone.
Time passed, so I went over to places where maybe possibly they would have gone.
Then, according to Casey, she receives a haunting phone call.
Hello? Mama? Kaylee? Kaylee? Baby? Where are you? Kaylee? Kaylee? You need to put a grown-up on the phone, okay, baby? Kaylee?
The call is disconnected.
What a sad story. The only problem is, it's not true. There was no nanny, there was no search, there was no phone call. All of it was made up. Investigators had already figured that out when they paid her another visit.
Suspicious, detectives ask Casey to take them to her workplace at Universal Studios, where she claims she was working the day Kaylee went missing.
I've worked here for 4 years, so you can call my boss.
Well, ma'am, I'm sorry. I've been here for 16 years. I've never seen you here ever, not once.
We're with the Orlando PD. Can you let us in, please?
Sure, follow me.
Once inside, detectives ask Casey to take them to her office.
Oh, sorry. That's Dave's office.
Casey claimed that she was an event planner at Universal Studios, which was a lie.
This is so classic Casey Anthony. She follows through with this lie further than any normal person would do. And finally, the jig is up.
Okay. I don't work here.
And everybody knows it. She knows that the cops know it. But they pull her into the conference room, and now it's time to talk.
Casey, everything you've told us is a lie. From you working here to dropping off Kaylee with Zenaida Gonzalez.
No, sir, that's true.
No, it's not.
They're beginning to question whether or not Casey is really being helpful in trying to find her daughter, Kaylee. So that's when the attention begins to switch to Casey Anthony as a potential suspect.
We've been to the apartments, Casey. Apartment 210 has been vacant for 2 months. Now, I've been doing this a long time, and I think you know where Kaylee is.
If I knew where she was, we wouldn't be here right now.
We can look at you in one of two ways. You're either scared about admitting a mistake you made, or you're a cold, callous monster who murdered her little girl.
I'm scared because I don't know where my daughter is.
There's a point where, like the boy who cried wolf, you just cannot, you don't know whether to believe it or not.
The stories that she was giving law enforcement did not make any sense, and they were odd, to say the least.
Casey, why did you wait?
For lying to police and not knowing where her daughter is, Casey is arrested on July 16th for child neglect, making false official statements, and obstructing an investigation.
When Casey was in lockup, another inmate gave her the name of an attorney, Jose Baez.
When I first met Casey, the first thing that I noticed was that she had never been in jail before. She was very uncomfortable and very out of place in jail.
This was a local story. I was writing for People magazine, I was in Orlando at the time, and I knew that this would be a story that people across the country would be interested in. So we ended up putting her on our cover, and everything blew up after that.
Well, you have a very young, beautiful child who's gone missing. You're going to get a lot of media attention.
On August 21st, 2008, Casey is bailed out by TV personality and bounty hunter Leonard Padilla.
He says he thought that Casey would be more helpful out of jail in searching for Kaylee. But by now, everyone knew about Casey's activities during this month that she was supposedly looking for Kaylee. The hot body contest, the hanging out at her boyfriend's house, the tattoo. Put it all together, America was outraged.
Most of this nonsense.
The worst thing.
Casey's unthinkable behavior is regularly the topic of TV talk shows. Nancy Grace even gives Casey the nickname Tot Mom, and her coverage puts headline news on the map.
Sales skyrocketed, we get letters. Everybody wanted to know what had happened to Kaylee Anthony.
It's getting to be sensational when people are standing outside of a home with signs that saying baby killer and where's Kaylee.
On October 14th, 2008, 3 months after Kaylee is reported missing, Casey is indicted on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, and multiple counts of lying to the police. Kaylee still hasn't been found, and Casey pleads not guilty. That summer, a city employee spots something suspicious just a half-mile from the Anthony home.
Roy Kronk was a water meter reader who parked his truck where he always parked it. He had to go to the bathroom, and he went into the woods. Roy Kronk thought he saw something, and he phoned it in, just like thousands of people across the country were phoning things in. And because that area had also been flooded, at the same time, that just wasn't put on the front burner. There were other leads to follow. There were other things that they were trying to figure out.
6 months after Kaylee's disappearance, police are finally able to search the area, and they contact a CSI team.
I remember December 11th, we got the phone call that somebody had found what they thought to be a human skull.
Not only did CSI investigators find a small human skull, but they found bone fragments scattered all across the area.
Every investigator was motivated out there by Kaylee, by finding every piece of her, every bit of her that we could recover from that scene and bringing her home to her family. And that was our motivation for the next 11 to 12 days, 10 to 15-hour days in the woods while we recovered her.
The morbid inventory includes the animal-ravaged bones of a toddler with duct tape wrapped around the skull, 2 trash bags, a laundry bag from Target, a Winnie the Pooh blanket from Kaylee's room, and remnants of her clothing.
And the DNA confirmed what we all kind of already knew, that that skull belonged to Kaylee Anthony.
Exactly what happened to young Kaylee will soon become more clear.
The Casey Anthony trial was in my hometown of Orlando, and I'd never seen anything like it.
Justice for Kaylee! Justice for Kaylee!
This was our OJ moment. This was our media circus. We had everything but celebrity status here.
Time magazine called it the social media trial of the century. People loved hating her. If it bleeds, it leads, and the media fed the machine.
At the start of the trial, the Orange County Courthouse becomes a macabre tourist attraction. People camp outside, hoping to secure one of the 50 courtroom seats open to the public.
This case certainly garnered more media attention than any of the cases that I worked. Her story was perfect for media attention, and she loves that.
The trial lasts 6 weeks, from May to July 2011, and the entire nation is watching.
The motive that the prosecution tried to present to the jury was that she wanted to live a life, a carefree, party-type life, without a child.
The prosecution paints a scenario of a young woman looking to free herself from the burden of taking care of her daughter. But if true, how did it happen?
My own personal theory is that Casey got up that morning.
Mama? Oh, in a minute, sweetie, okay? I'll be right there.
And she gave her a little bit of Xanax to silence her a little bit, quiet her down, make her very pliable.
Although no residue is found at the home, social media speculates that Xanax inspired the nickname Zanny attributed to Kaylee's fictitious nanny.
And then chloroformed her. The chloroform was enough that it really knocked her for a loop. Then she took her out to the pool, okay? Put the ladder up and dumped her in the water just to make sure she stopped breathing. That's the reason why when Cindy got home that day, she found the gate open and the ladder to the pool up, something that she never would have done. And she put tape on that girl around her face, around her hair, because she was angry. And she wanted to make sure that that girl was dead, dead, dead.
Kaylee's skull was found with duct tape on it, and it was the exact same brand of duct tape that was in the family home.
So when we searched the house, we found duct tape, not in the condition that we had hoped, not in a roll form, but in some small pieces that were stuck to the outside of a gas can.
The prosecution surmises that Casey then wraps Kaylee in her Winnie the Pooh blanket, stuffs her in a laundry bag, then into 2 trash bags, and places her in the trunk of her parents' Pontiac. Experts speculate that Casey drove around for 5 days in the hot Florida sun, while partying at night, until she could no longer ignore the smell of Kaylee's decomposing body.
The prosecution believed that after abandoning the car, Casey put that bag of trash in the trunk to explain why it smelled so bad.
The issue with the trunk and the garbage, what explanation is there? She didn't need to provide one, but it didn't look good.
In my opinion, it was decompositional fluid in the trunk. That was what I smelled.
The smell was so bad that experts were able to vacuum capture air samples into vials. They tested positive for the components of chloroform as well as decomposition matter.
By then, a lot of the evidence, the forensic evidence, had deteriorated. What do you have left? Chloroform dissipates. If there was enough chloroform in the car, then there wasn't enough at the time the car was examined.
To this day, I don't believe that science is sound. And while the research may be interesting, it was very much so at its infancy stage.
Experts believe that Casey had no choice but to dispose of Kaylee's corpse, and that she did so just a half-mile from the family's home.
And then throw her in the woods? This is a woman who has no soul.
Now, on the other side, the defense team had a totally different theory. Jose Baez argued that Kaylee had accidentally drowned in the pool, and George Anthony told Casey that he would take care of it.
This is not a murder case. This is a tragic accident that happened to some very disturbed people.
There was no proof of that. Basically, they were just throwing George under the bus.
Now, it's not our job to prove that happened. It's the prosecutor's job to prove it didn't. And they must exclude every reasonable doubt. They did not. That's the way our system works, and it's that way for a reason. You can't prove a negative. Prove you don't know my middle name. You can't. So how am I going to prove something that whether something happened or didn't happen?
If the defense can just point to one piece of evidence that makes sense in conjunction with accidental death, you have reasonable doubt. So it was an interesting strategy.
But the prosecution has what they hope is a sure thing up their sleeve.
There were a lot of incriminating searches on the family computer that Casey used, including how to make chloroform, neck breaking, foolproof suffocation. But the problem was, we didn't know who had made those searches.
Complicating things is the fact that Cindy Anthony has become alienated from the prosecution in their quest for the death penalty and is now cooperating with the defense. She even claims that the chloroform search was likely her doing when she mistyped the word chlorophyll.
The searches for chloroform, who committed the searches, how many searches there were, that undermined some of the credibility of whether or not there was any premeditation involved.
The defense team makes another startling claim about Casey Anthony's father.
The defense said yes, Casey is a lying party girl, but that is a response to years of molestation at the hands of her father.
There was a lot of debate back and forth as to whether it happened or not.
And it all began when Casey was 8 years old and her father came into her room and began to touch her inappropriately.
We weren't there to try a molestation trial, but there had to be an explanation for her behavior and why she exhibited odd behavior. That is why we decided to go down that road.
George Anthony molesting Casey was quickly discarded. Nobody really believed it, but it did offer reasonable doubt.
There was no smoking gun. There was no murder weapon. There was nothing that specifically tied Casey to Kaylee's death. And that was a problem.
But I still think at that point, at those closing arguments, people were still saying, oh, this thing is a slam dunk.
Casey doesn't testify.
On the 4th of July, 2011, the case went to the jury, and millions of people across the country were glued to their TV set because they were finally going to get a verdict.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Have you reached a verdict?
After 10 hours and 40 minutes of deliberations, the jury returns with a verdict.
Will the defendant rise along with counsel?
I very purposefully wanted to be alone when the verdict came in.
Madam Clerk, you may publish the verdicts.
It's like the JFK, you know where you were that day.
As to the charge of first-degree murder, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty, so say we all, dated at Orlando.
As she read the first not guilty verdict, I remember I grabbed Casey's hand because I knew first-degree murder was off the table, and I knew her life was saved.
As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty, so say we all, dated at Orlando.
And then the second not guilty came in, and I squeezed her hand even tighter.
Aggravated manslaughter of a child, not guilty.
And then when the third not guilty verdict came in, I squeezed it even tighter. I might have cracked a bone or something in there, because I knew at that point that she was not going to be convicted of any of the charges surrounding the death of Kaylee.
I'm just like, what? I'm just like, what happened? Did this really just happen?
And I just cried. I didn't cry because of a miscarriage of justice. I didn't cry because Casey got away with something. I cried because I felt like I let Kaylee down.
With no one able to prove how Kaylee died, the jury doesn't completely believe the prosecution's theory, and enough reasonable doubt is raised to acquit.
They only convicted her of 4 misdemeanor counts of providing false information to police. And everybody thought, she's gonna be out of jail within a month. And sure enough, she was.
In my opinion, in this case, the prosecution overcharged. Had they charged her with aggravated child neglect, the odds of getting some kind of a conviction would have been much greater.
I was very surprised. I thought that the jury would have done a much better job, found her guilty of something. They could have dropped it to manslaughter. They could have done a lot.
The prosecution had to put the pieces of the puzzle together to tell a story that was believable to the jurors, to the extent that they believed beyond any reasonable doubt that Casey Anthony killed Kaylee. They couldn't do that. The pieces of the puzzle did not make a complete picture. There were holes. There were holes in the timeline. There were holes in the evidence. There were holes in the explanation. So from the standpoint of trying to prove first-degree murder, premeditated first-degree murder, they weren't able to do that.
You're supposed to have a system where 10 guilty people go free before we convict an innocent person. That's not how society today looks at our system. It's the other way around. They'd rather 10 innocent people get convicted than a guilty person go free.
The public takes to Facebook, Twitter, and other social media outlets to express their outrage with the verdict.
There are people who think that the prosecution spent too much time on her partying and not as much time spent on how Kaylee died, how she was dumped, what happened next. All we knew was that Casey Anthony put on a blue dress and danced on a bunch of tables, and that wasn't enough to convict her.
Guys, just leave us alone, please. On up here. Do not.
The not guilty verdict is so galvanizing that the family begins receiving death threats.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
There were so many outcries for justice and so many death threats that the Department of Corrections did something that they normally don't do. They didn't give us her address or her whereabouts. When she left the jail, she was gone.
There can never be justice for Kaylee. Justice for Kaylee would be for it never to have happened. And you can't make that so.
Casey Anthony files for bankruptcy on January of 2013. Her estimated debt, including legal fees, exceeds $500,000. At 29, 5 years after the trial, Casey re-emerges publicly as a family portrait photographer in Florida.
Anything else for you today? Ma'am, anything else today?
Oh, no. Here, honey, put it up on the counter.
Thank you. Hi, anything else for you today?
That's it.
Casey has tried to rebuild some sort of life, but we have a long memory in Florida. We remember the partying for 30 days. We remember the pictures of Kaylee Anthony, and she'll never escape that. That's the hell that she has to pay.
The only positive outcome I can see from it is that maybe legislators create some laws to protect children, or maybe some mothers went home that night and held their kids a little tighter.